Hey everyone, Happy New Year and welcome to Ask Me Monday. I am Vickie Howell. So good to see you. This is the very first one of 2017 and I hadn't planned on being here today, but I just thought, you know what the heck, why not? I missed you guys. So wanted to check in and see what everybody was doing. I would love during the live broadcast if you would post in the comment section what you've been working on during the holiday season. I mean, post making gifts, like during the actual break time. What were you crafting, knitting, crocheting, drawing, songwriting, whatever it is? I would love to know. So just post that. Also, I always love to know where you're watching from. So, please post that in the comments as well. So I spent most of the time off with family and friends, which is, the best way to do it. We had my in-laws in town for the first part. It's my family tradition. My maiden name is Montoya, and it's sort of a Hispanic tradition to do tamales for Christmas Eve. So I do that. It's one of the few Montoya traditions that I feel like I still have. And so I make sure that we do that every Christmas Eve. And we have sort of like found family and family that come out for it. So we did that on Christmas Eve, had a big bonfire in our backyard, spent a lot of time, just kind of hanging out, a lot of eating, a lot of drinking of wine, just some good times. We also, of course, we mourned the death of Carrie Fisher. We live in Austin, and it's a huge fanboy, fangirl city. And so hundreds, maybe even 1,000 people came out to this particular theater that we have, and they did a lightsaber vigil, which was super touching, regardless of whether or not you're a Star Wars fan. It was just really touching to be there and see, if you bring that much light to the world, you've done something right. So that was really touching. And then, of course, when her mom died the next day, we paid our own little private tribute. I'm a huge musical fan, so my girlfriend and I watched Singing in the Rain while we did a little bit of crafting. And so anyways, a bunch of time. I also have 2 Christmas babies. My eldest son turned 17, which is crazy town since I'm clearly only 29. And my middle son is turning 15 in a couple days, so we're kind of still in the throes of celebration. And so I try to step back from work a little bit and work on craft projects that aren't necessarily going to be something that are, put onto the blog or given to a company. And sometimes what that means is that I have to step away from knitting and crochet, because that's just how my brain works. I just I made this, and so I want to share it with people. So my friend that I just mentioned, she and her family were visiting from Seattle, but she had taken a business trip to New York the week before and went to Pearl Soho. I don't know if any of you have been to Pearl Soho. It's a very famous knitting and sewing supply store in New York, and they also have a gorgeous blog called the Knitting Bee, or the Pearl Bee. Anyway, she found these, what I will probably regret starting, but they're pretty amazing, these kits by Heptic Lab, and it's still in the quilting hoops, so you may not be able to see it very well, but this is a map of Austin, where I live. I live in Austin, Texas. And so it's, you just quilt the whole thing. I don't know that I'll do the whole thing. We'll see. I've only started with part of the lake, which is actually the Colorado River, but we call it the lake over here. And I haven't gotten that much further, but my friend who's from Seattle, she brought the Seattle one. We're kind of nerdy like that. We like to have either a thematic craft, or we like to work on the same craft whenever we're together. So we kind of sat and worked on that throughout the day. So you can tune in for probably the next 15 years to watch me working on that, because it's going to be a life's work. I'm not going to kid you. The other thing that I was working on is this is a super easy hat. This is for the Pussy Hat Project. I don't know if you're familiar with it. There's a march happening. It's a women's march happening on Washington on January 21st. And it's just for general equality for women, women's rights, from every spectrum, from maternity leave to equal pay to, all of the things that make us as, equal to anybody of any other gender, race, nationality, sexuality, all that stuff. So these hats, what the Pussy Hat Project, as I understand it, their goal was to send 1.7 million pink hats, and it's called that because they fold over and you get these two cat ears, and so they just want like the sea of pink, which is pretty amazing. And I was able, I'll post a link to the pattern that they've provided if you're interested in the comment section. But what I planned to go to DC for the march, but I ended up getting a gig in California a couple days before, and it gets really expensive, and then also I just didn't want to be away from the family that long. So there's going to be another march in Austin here, and they probably have them locally everywhere if you'd like to get involved in your own city and represent. So I'm working on that. So that's sort of a side project. And I got a new yarn bowl for Christmas, one of the presents from my husband. So it's been sitting there. I know, Steen, I know your brain went somewhere else. But there's a tie-in. Go read about it, and there's a tie-in. There's a reason they've called it that. And I won't get into it because it gets a little political, and I've decided not to kick off the year that way. All right. So what we're going to be working on today so Joy, first of all, let me say hi to everyone. Hi, Joy's asking if I've ever done an episode on short rows. I did do short row circles with garter stitch, and I'll try to remember to go through all the shows and look, but you can always go to the video section on my Facebook page, so it's just facebook.com/Vickie Howell. If you click on videos on the side, you can see the Ask Me Monday playlist, and it lists them all. So you can always go back and look and rewatch and do that. Also, why I'm talking about tabs on the side, just over the past week, I've been working with a developer. I know a lot of you maybe aren't familiar with how to find podcasts. I also host a podcast called Craftish, and where I interview people from all types, all over the creative realm, everywhere from professional knitters to radio DJs, just to sort of hear about their journeys. I'm really interested in inspiring people to become creative and also just find out what makes creative people tick. A lot of you, I've heard, don't necessarily know how to find podcasts. Some of you just go to iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud or to my website, but I wanted to make it easy since I know we all spend a lot of time on Facebook. So you can now go over to, if you go to my Facebook page, on the side where you see the list of, photos, videos, newsletter, everything, there's now a link for Craftish podcast, and you can click on it. You can scroll through them. You can watch any or all of them, or listen rather, right from the Facebook page. So please check that out and tell a friend because that's really a passion project for me, that podcast. So I would love more people to hear it. So I wanted to work a little bit today. So I want to do a lot of new year, new skills types thing. I might start bringing in more than just Ask Me Mondays. I'm thinking about Technique Thursdays or Tuesdays. I really want to up the ante for people's skills, but also continue my mission, which is making crafting accessible. So little bits of technique, but still projects that are quick and cool that you can accomplish. And so one of those projects I put out right before the holidays is this dashing beanie. So I made this one for my husband for Christmas, but it's unisex. I have it in 2 different sizes, and it's just a straight up rib beanie, but it's deceptive because I've got what's called corrugated rib in it. Now, corrugated rib is just ribbing in 2 different colors at one time. But the cool thing, so I'm a big fan of stripes of any form, but this is a way to have stripes, but instead of horizontally, vertically. It's also a really great introduction to stranded work, and I'm going to show you, so I'm going to be focused on that today. And the reason why it's easier to start with corrugated rib than straight up Fair Isle or other stranded work is that you don't have to worry about following a chart or counting or anything. You're just alternating every one. And you can absolutely do it with just one hand, but I thought it would be fun to show you how I do it, which is I use both hands to make it go quickly and make the yarn not twist as much. So I'm going to get you started on that. I'm also just going to show you some of the, I've made, my mom and I made 5 or 6 of these also over the holidays as well. And we sent them to, there's a band called Explosions in the Sky, If you have never listened to them, they're amazing. I love crafting and writing to them, walking to them, running to them. Really great instrumental rock bands. They are, one of their guitarists is a dear family friend, and they did all the music for Friday Night Lights. They've done a million other things, but they're really well known for that. And they support my podcast by letting me use one of their songs for the theme music. So I sent them all hats as a thank you, and we did them in different colorways, because this is my Woolpack Chunky that I did with Daremoors. And by the way, this hat pattern, the dashing beanie pattern, is available at daremoors.com. I'll also post a link to it as well in the comment section of this. If you're watching on YouTube later, I will put it right in the description. All right, so I made one of these two colors. I did a straight up black and white, of course. This shibori blue and the gray. A lot of great neutral colors that you can do for guys. I'm going to reach past you. I apologized. I love me this kind of ochre color. I'm really into it lately, so I did one of these. So anyways, there's tons of color choices that you can do. But I'm going to start off with what I thought would be the easiest for you to see. I'm going to move some stuff out of the way. Is a really contrasting turquoise and gray. So I'm going to be using the color Lagoon with my gray, which is called Soot. So this is the part where I do the weird flip around thing, and it's never pretty, but I'm going to do it now. And this is where you talk amongst each other and you tell each other what you're all knitting, crocheting, crafting, and or making right now. Okay, I'm going to do the flip. All right. So the first thing that you do for this hat, or just in general when you're working with corrugated rib in the round, is that you want to cast on in one color. Don't worry about the second color. I find it to not be very clean if you try to cast on with both colors. And then you're going to knit one row. And again, it is, Gianna, she said she's never heard that green called ochre before. That's the fancy name, and it's O-C-H-R-E, I think. I actually had first heard an artist, Courtney Cerruti, use that word, and I was like, oh, I thought it was kind of chartreusey mustard, but there's an actual name for it, so there you go. And Chris, the little poncho thing that you were looking at and asking about in the background, that is the chunky hooded cowl that I did for Clover, courtesy of Clover. That is free on my blog right now and free on the Clover blog right now. All right, back in action. So the first thing that I've done is I've cast on the amount of stitches that's called for in the pattern. So you would do this if you were making mittens, hats, whatever. You would cast on a row, and I recommend knitting one row plain in one color. I just think it's cleaner and nicer and less maddening. So then, I need to grab another ball of yarn. We are ready to start introducing our second color. I'm just going to ditch that marker because I know it's the beginning of the row. All right, so we're going to start working in a knit one, purl one. It's always better, unless you're going for a different look, it's always better to introduce the new color on a knit stitch, because the purl stitch, if you introduce it on a purl stitch, you'll see the underside of both, and you're going to get a weird sort of like color bump. It could absolutely be a design feature, but it's not one for this particular project. Okay, I am using size 10.5 needles, which are the needles that I recommend using with Woolpack Chunky. All right, so I'm ready to introduce my color. So I've got my color A, which is the soot. And I'm ready, this is the first stitch to introduce the color B. So to do that, I'm just going to make sure that I have a long enough tail to weave in later. About 6 inches is great. And you're going to just lay it over the stitch and knit that one. Okay, now the next color, I'm going to move this over here, I'm going to purl with, and that's the color that we started with. So I've purled with the gray. All right, now this is where, now that we've set up, you can do one of two things. You can just continue like this using one hand. So I'm going to switch over to knit, and then I grab the other color. Whoops, that's the tail, not that one. Grab the other color, the gray, and purl. And you could do that all the way around. That's absolutely okay, but can you see the hot mess that's happening with the tails? It's not a problem, you can do it. I noticed my mom does it this way, and she just every once in a while will drop her hat and just kind of let it spin to unwind. But you get a little bit less of that if you use both hands. Now, basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be both throwing and knitting continental at the same time. Don't let that blow your mind though. It's not as hard as it sounds. But the good thing about this is regardless of what type of knitter you are, there's a little something for everyone here. All right, because I am both right-handed and a throw knitter, I find it easier to do the knit stitch, the easier of the stitches, with my left hand in the continental method. If you are left-handed and or a continental knitter, you may not have the same opinion, but you do you. All right, so I'm setting up. So in my right hand, I'm going to put the color that I purl with. In my left hand, I'm going to put the color that I knit with. So what I'm doing is I'm just getting a little tension and I'm wrapping it around my finger a couple times. So I see that the next stitch needs to be a knit stitch. Thank you, Suzanne, for sharing the video. I appreciate it. So I'm inserting. Now to knit with my left hand in the continental method, I'm just taking the right hand needle and I'm picking the yarn and pulling it through. So now I've knit that one. So now it's time for a purl in the other color, in color A. So I need to bring my yarn in front and I purl that stitch. Okay, now I need to remember to put my yarn in back to get it out of the way, right? Now if the tension got a little bit loose, you can let go and reset up. Once you get going, you probably won't have to do it every time, but working slow like this, sometimes you have to. Okay, so I knit one, purl one, knit one with my left hand, purl one with my right hand. And you just continue that all the way around and for about 4 or 5 rounds so that you get a nice solid chunk of color. Okay, Chris is saying this is how she does it too. Now this is also a method that you can use for just any Fair Isle-esque type stranding as well. And I'll show you, so you can already see it kind of forming. So I'm going to show you a piece that I've worked several rows of. What you end up getting is something that looks like this. And you see there's some really nice columns of color there. And just be gentle with yourself. You know, the tension's going to be a little bit off at first, so I spend a lot of time going like this just to make sure. The great thing about this particular yarn, about the Woolpaca Chunky, is that it's chain construction. Can you see it's got chain construction? Means that there's a lot of room to bloom, which means a lot of room for air to get in beneath the, or within the fibers. So that is really forgiving. Okay, so I've done this first block of rows, which you can see is this. For this particular, for the dashing pattern, what I did then was I did another round of exactly the same, but I swapped colors. So the color that I knit with before, I purl with, and vice versa. So I'm back at the beginning of the round. The round below, I see, okay, this has all been a turquoise, a lagoon column. So now that means I want it to be a soot column. So I'm swapping hands. Actually, I may not even. Okay. I'm going to knit with the new color now. And then purl with the one below. And then you just keep swapping back and forth. So I don't know if you've noticed, but I've switched my hands a couple different ways. So right now, I don't have it wrapped around my finger at all. I have it wrapped around my index finger, and then I'm kind of using my, kind of the meat of my hand, and I'm pressing up against the hat. And, you know, it's decent. It's decent tension. If you want tighter tension, if that feels too loosey-goosey, then you can do the 1-2 wrapper-rail, which I am now going to call it. Such a nerd. And then you can, and what that does is that gives you a little more control. See how I'm pulling it? You don't want to go too crazy tight because you'll bunch your hat, but you know, kind of mellow yellow. And then you just keep going. And after a while, you may notice that you've pulled and you're not letting enough yarn go and you're about to lose circulation in your hand. Don't do that. Loosen up and then reload and then keep going. And then you would just do that all the way around. I'm looking through some comments right now. It says, Alice says, I taught myself continental by doing a few knit stitches, then around, etc., then adding purl stitches at the same time until I was comfortable. And now she can do both as she's needed. That's great. And this is a great project. This is a great teaching project. If you've always wanted to learn how to continental knit, but you're not ready to dive into a full project, this gives a little bit of everything. And honestly, if this method is too not you, please, like I said at the beginning, you can drop each strand and pick up the next one each time. And then what I like about this project and what I try to do in all my projects is I try to give people a break from any technique. So there's a good solid, you know, couple inches at least, 2-3 inches at least, where it's just knit one, purl one with one solid color. And then you switch back a little bit there. And then all of the decreases for the crown are all done in a solid color too. So you don't have to worry about working the decreases and working the stranding as well, but it's also done in a rib. So it's really easy, fun, because it's done on 10.5s, which if you're watching in any country but the US is a 6.5 millimeter needle. It's pretty fast, and this yarn is alpaca and wool, and it's delightful to work with. Okay, I'm gonna switch around and then we can talk questions. All right, I'm going to do a little scroll through. If there are any questions, let me know. There's a little bit of delay if you're watching this live, so I won't see your question right away. So I'm going to kind of just do a little scrolling, make sure that everybody understands. It looks like we're good. Rebecca says she's a thrower. This boggles me. Just try it. That's one of those things where it looks harder than it is and you just have to go for it. And the thing is like, folks, like it's only knitting. Like if you screw up, no big whoop, you know, like it is what it is. But new year, new schools, let's do this, right? Okay, well, if there aren't any other questions, I didn't plan ahead enough this time because I wasn't planning to be here to get your questions ahead of time for other craft related questions. But I will continue to do this. Next week, I'm going to be back here. The folks at June Cashmere are bringing me to you next week. So I get to play with some of their gorgeous cashmere. We're going to talk cashmere, talk a little bit about it. And we're also going to learn sort of a next level cable for one of their projects. And there might even be a giveaway or some special treat to do to go with that as well. So looking forward to that. We've got some fun stuff planned for this year. I'm really looking forward to growing this community more. So please, if you enjoy this, share it on your Facebook page, tell a friend, get people to follow me. And as always, I want to hear your suggestions, what you want to learn. If you're listening to my podcast, please feel free to message me about guests that you'd like to see this year. I really consider you guys a vital part of this community or my community. And our creativity projects together are just part of nurturing that. I am also going to be doing a new class that's going to be coming up. Hopefully it'll go live in probably not this month, but February. Again, just trying to get more people knitting. I've teamed up with Brit & Co. If you haven't checked them out before, please do. They've got some super bright, saturated beauty going on their website. So that's going to be really fun. And I'm looking forward to teaching people, you know, how to make a hat and cable and do some color work and that kind of thing. Just sort of, if you know anybody that's kind of just a step above beginner, like maybe they've got a project or two under their belt, this is going to be the class for them. So I'll get you more information on that as I know it. And it looks like there's not any questions. So I'm going to go ahead and call that a success. I'll find out later. If you have any other questions, Jana wants to know if Woolpack is sold in the States or do you have to order it online? It's only available online, but Daramore's does have a US site and it's not additional international shipping or anything. So go out and check that out. I will put links to that and links to the dashing pattern in the comment section of this when we're done. And oh, Kathy wants to know if starting the rolls rolls up. It does just a smidge, but honestly, when you're wearing it, you can't tell at all. And it just gives a nice stable edge. Now, what you could do, you absolutely, for that first row, you don't have to knit it. You could work that in knit one, purl one row as well. That round that way as well. Totally your call. This is just the way I designed this one because I just liked that little, I liked being able to see that line. I find the curling to be just a little bit of flair there. So that is that. All right, everyone, thank you so much for being here on this New Year's holiday. I guess technically this is the holiday since New Year's was on a Sunday. I appreciate spending the time with you as always, and I will see you next week. Bye.